When you visit downtown Franklin, Tennessee, there are plenty of options as far as seeing Civil War homes. On this day, we're visiting the Lotz House, a home that has a rich history. The Lotz House sits majestically on a street corner in Franklin. It was here that German immigrant Johann Albert Lotz first lived, and here that so many American soldiers died during the Battle of Franklin. Lotz House Museum Executive Director J.T. Thompson takes us back in time when the Civil War interrupted the lives of so many Franklin residents.
Johann Albert Lotz, German immigrant, born in Saxony, Germany. His mother will pass the day that he was born at the age of 13. His father enlists him, puts him into, basically says, in order to get up off the couch, go to work. Dies in what's called the European Guild system. Which means he will travel for 20 years, 2 decades, through Germany, Switzerland, earning the title Master Woodworker. Earns, gets what I call his 20-year college education, brings bride Margaretha to America to seek fame and fortune. The couple arrive in Franklin in 1854. A year later, he'll purchase his property from Mr. Carter across the street. 3 years to build the home. And like the Carters and like the McGavics at Carton, a mile to the southeast, Lotz has no slaves. He uses no slave labor. He builds his home by himself. Show home, model home, working resume. Meaning the millwork on the outside of the house has the flowers at the top of every column. On the outside, there's a magnificent acanthus leaf scroll. And I love to tell folks, look at the card above each window. The first floor design, totally different than the second. Again, trying to show clients don't like design A, happy to do design B. Suffers terribly in terms of what happens in Franklin even before the battle. In the spring of after the 1860 census is taken, there'll be 2 twins, boy, girl. Julian and Julius are the names. And they're born to the family in the home. In the spring of 63, those toddlers, those babies, somewhere between 2, 2.5, both of them drink from a water well, water source here on the property that had been poisoned, contaminated by the Northern Army, and tragically, the spring of 1863, both of those babies will die. Suffice to say, Mom and Dad have some issues, some real significant issues with the Federal Army 18 months before the battle breaks out, likely where you're parked in their front yard this morning. There are 3 very small children in this home, just as the battle was about to break. The oldest one is Paul, 9, the little girl in the family named Matilda. She will celebrate her important 6th birthday in this house. The family will actually celebrate the very small sugar cake the day before that bloody battle takes place. The baby of the Lotz family is named Augustus. He's 2. And to understand Franklin and how this house relates, the town, which is half a mile to the north, 750 people call it their home. They will go to sleep on Tuesday night, November 29th, 1864, not having a clue what's about to happen. Very early on the morning of November 30, 3:30, it's difficult for us to imagine today. 24, 25, 26,000 Northern soldiers, horses, wagons, cans, mules. They're coming down Columbia Pike. They're under orders to get to Nashville quickly. But as this massive army gets 1 mile north of Franklin, they had a problem. Harpeth River. A wet autumn in Middle Tennessee that year. The water in the Harpeth is too high to cross. The county bridge is down. Total chaos in downtown Franklin. Our world today in Middle Tennessee, traffic gridlock on the interstate, quite literally. 800 supply wagons and mule teams are backed up bumper to bumper to bumper. The Northern commander here, General John McAllister Schofield, West Point graduate, orders engineers fix the bridge quickly, boys. He sends the bulk of his massive army back south of us, and again, 200 yards to the south of us, they begin to dig what they call their entrenched line. For our purposes, succinctly, deep ditch, dirt behind the ditch, logs are placed on top of the dirt. In short, it's a very strong defensive line which faces towards the south. Now, according to Lotz, his diary, he is a prolific writer, by the way. The morning of the battle, 10:15, a sharp knock at his front door. Northern Army here to tell him, I say kiddingly, facetiously, they intend to do some yard work for him that day. And what that means in all seriousness, the Federal Army will go behind the man's home, tearing down barn, stable, outhouse, smokehouse, his detached kitchen. They level his all-important woodworking shop. They take out every splinter of wood. They cut down every tree standing on the man's property. And so proudly, he had finished his acreage, had surrounded every acre with a wide rail fence like the one you see in the front today. Northern Army mows all that fencing down. They use all that wood to help fortify and strengthen their entrenched line. And then it's time for lunch. They moved the east of the house right there. They began to slaughter his cows, his hogs, sheep, and chickens. And I tell folks, a reminder, when you walk in this house today, and I'll be quiet for a minute, clearly today you can hear the cars driving up and down the highway, the wind blows, the birds sing, the thunderstorms roll through. You hear what's inside, going on the outside. Flashing back 150 years ago, mom, dad, 3 small children are huddled inside. They can clearly hear the commotion that's swirling around their home that day. Frankly, when they cut that milk cow's throat, it screams, it squeals, and they all hear it. And I personally encourage everybody who walks into Lotz House today, take a step back, best as you possibly can, and try for just a moment to put yourself in the place of that mom and dad. Simply put, 18 months earlier, at the hands of the very same Northern Army doing the damage to the property that day, they'd bury 2 babies. At this point in time, the Lotz family, they're filled with nothing but sheer and utter terror. 2 o'clock, 2 miles to south of us at a place called Winstead Hill, Confederate Army arrives. Confederate General John Bell Hood is in command. He is also a West Point graduate. And Hood will order battle lines formed. And when it finishes forming that November afternoon, it will stretch end to end, 3.5 miles long, facing north into Franklin. Lotz walks out, he looks across 2 miles of open corn and cotton field, and he'll actually write in his diary what he sees. His words are not mine. It appears to be a tidal wave of brown and gray forming there on the distant horizon, and it will dawn on him, we're in trouble. It's a solid wooden house. Very late that day, with trembling hands, he picks up his baby with one arm, toolbox the other. His wife will take Matilda's hand, and Paul, just 9, will follow in behind. They dash through that front door. They run through all these Northern soldiers preparing for battle, and they will go 110 steps across the street to the Carter house. Brick house, brick basement. Everybody understands this family's chance of surviving better in a brick house as opposed to a wooden one. 4 o'clock, and your viewers will know, in Middle Tennessee in the autumn and the fall, we have those bright crimson red sunsets. It was the case that afternoon as well. In fact, the western sky, right there, it's described as being so blood red that armies north and south, they'll call this 2-mile valley the valley of death, the valley of no return, even before the battle takes place. And at 4, up on Winstead Hill, a single Confederate bugle will sound, a lone battle flag, it will fall forward. And in every literal sense, the last grand charge that the Southern Army will ever make, it will step off. Imagine 25, 26, 27,000 Confederate soldiers. 100 battle flags were whipping in the autumn breeze. Officers, generals on horses, they're in front, they're leading the attack, and something unique. No other battle but this one. 2 Southern brass bands move into formation that day with the advancing army. This side of the highway, they're playing Dixie. That side of the highway, they play a fun song that they call the Bonnie Blue Flag. And here they come. There'll be a Northern soldier, Adam Weaver. He's about 600 yards to the south of us that day. He writes in his diary that the sound of the Southern Army's marching feet, all in unison moving toward him that day, it reminded him of thunder in a spring storm. 4:15, 4:30, Southern Army crashes through the entrenched line, and Southern soldiers will come surging right up the center of the highway, and they reach as far north in their advance as this front yard. And it's right outside the window here that they swam into 1,900 Northern soldiers. Survivors describe the collision like this. It was as if 2 ocean waves of men swam into each other. And it's this front yard across the street to what was in the Carter House Yard and Gardens that today the scholarly historians call worst, the most intense, the most ferocious hand-to-hand fighting of the American Civil War. Biting, scratching, picking up sticks and stones, swords and sabers, picks and shovels to make the point. 400 yards to the south of us, there's 4 12-pound Napoleon cannons firing canister rounds, the infantry killer. 15, 16-year-old Confederate drummer boy, Irish, picks up a fence rail, likely one of Lotz, trying to stop one of those cannons from firing. He shoves it in the barrel, the cannon discharges, and witness will describe that young boy as exploding like a ripe tomato. What happens here? Medieval, brief, 15, 20 minutes tops. The Southern charge forward, stopped here. They're forced to fall back. Most shot and captured. The Northern Army regains a broken line. By now 5, the sun's down, and something else very unique about the Battle of Franklin. 80% fought once the sun is set. Over the course of the next 4 hours, Southern Army hurls itself at the Northern entrenched line again and again and again. Attack, attack, attack. According to Northern accounts, 17 different times. And by 9, on the night of the 30th, 1864, the Battle of Franklin, Tennessee, as we know it today, it's over. Now, Thursday, December 1st, 1864, You may walk out in the front yard. You may get out there, you may spin, you may look in any direction you wish to turn. On the ground the following morning, you've witnessed, been a party to 10,000 American casualties. 10,000. Do that today. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, FedEx, and Pizza Hut delivery. You tell folks that, you see their eyes roll back in the back of their heads. How do you place it to perspective today? Admittedly, difficult to comprehend. This will help everyone. What happens outside these two front doors, basically the equivalent of 3 days of 9/11. Back to back to back. The town of Franklin witnesses that carnage in 5 short hours. Statistically, more American generals, 6 die in Franklin than any battle in American history. In fact, more American soldiers fight and die here than do taking Omaha Beach, do D-Day, June 6, 1944. Descriptions of the battlefield the following day. My term, generically horrific. Bodies described as stacked like firewood, stacked 5 and 6 feet deep, but I think the best, if not the worst, description comes from Lotz when he writes, the dead in his front yard, they stand like scarecrows. They may not fall for the dead at their feet. 17 horses lay dead and dying in the Lotz house front yard. Across the street, 40 horses and mules lay dead and dying. It's trite and it's cliche, and often it's overused. But in Franklin's case, that day it proves to be true each and every time. What happens to this small town, what happens to the families that call Franklin their home, and perhaps most importantly, everyone hears the Lotz family story. What happens to those families' children? That day for them, it will be hell on earth. Mr. Lotz, his bride, Margaretha, Paul 9, Matilda Jess 6, Augustus 2, they survive across the street with the Carters 15, 16 hours. Should let you know the battle, as it rages, it's so loud that none of those people can hear themselves screaming. Following morning, short walk back home, front door, 110 steps. None of the Lotz able to take a step back to their home without stepping on the body of a dead American soldier. Lotz walks in. He's horrified to see that the house that takes 3 years to build, it's the most heavily damaged structure left standing. It's filled with dead and dying from both sides, a unique situation for he and his family. And I need to make the point, the Battle of Franklin takes place effectively 5 months before the war is over. The economy here in the South, broken. No one has a dime to pay a master worker, a penny to carve or make anything. It's tough for him to feed the family, but Lotz, he'll persevere, survives, food on the table in Franklin through the summer of '69, and in June of that year, determines it's time to get back to his true love. The house is put together for the second time, and it's time to start making those fantastic grand pianos. But the very first musical instrument that he carves post-war will not be like anything else he'd ever done before. On the top, he carves a great big American eagle with outstretched wings. One side he carves the U.S. flag, on the other side he carves the Confederate battle flag, the St. Andrew's Cross. And for a reason that we do not know why, Lotz will carve it with that eagle's claws, its talons, clutching, grasping, and digging into the Confederate battle flag. Y'all will know this, some of your viewers, others likely not, but you need to. I always tell folks, come to Franklin, take a side trip. Highway here, 60 miles south, 1 hour. We're into that picturesque historical town that we call Pulaski, Tennessee, Giles County, home to birthplace of the KKK. The Klan's active. They are prolific. Many call the Klan vital in Middle Tennessee the summer of 1869. They hear about Mr. Lotz. They send a delegation of Klan members to check out the grand piano. The Klan loses it because in their estimation, Lotz had chosen to show great disrespect to their flag by having that eagle to face it with its claws. A war of words erupts between Lotz and the Klan. It will worsen, it will fester, and it will reach a point. Lotz finds out the Klan has plans for him. Their intention to teach the German immigrant a lesson. They're going to drag him right out there into his very own front yard where they intend to tar and feather the man. It's a hideous, it's a painful, it's a terrible way to die. In 10 days' time, upon learning the news, Lotz will take action of his own. He sells his home, sells the piano inside. He will purchase a covered wagon, and naturally, he'll take his family to safety. 2,300 miles all the way to San Jose, California. The Klan quite literally scares the living daylights out of him, and he goes as far west from Middle Tennessee as he possibly may go. That Lotz house this year, it's 158 years old, and in that time frame, it has been many things to many different people. Private residence, attorney's office, submarine, sandwich shop, bakery, boarding house, apartment house, florist, and courtesy of the Franklin, Tennessee Jaycees, used for several years as the requisite haunted house during Halloween. The home was placed on the National Historic Register back in 1976. Despite that move, 15 years ago, house about to be sold, turned into a Mexican food restaurant. and playing off the man's last name who built it, spelled L-O-T-Z. Going to name and call their Mexican food restaurant Lots of Tacos, only in America. A family up in Nashville heard about it at the 11th hour. They stepped in, they purchased the house to protect it. My greatest joy to let you know that we've now been open for 7 years. We're a nonprofit foundation. We take not a penny, not a dime from the state, the local, or the federal government. We keep the house open 7 days a week with volunteers giving tours. So would love for your viewers to come out and spend a little time with us here in Franklin.
The room that we're standing in right now, can you describe this room?
Absolutely. This is the upstairs staying room. Basically, our word today, we call it the living room, the family room, the den. They'll play games in this room. Ladies, of course, using this magnificent sewing table. I tell folks, if you appreciate macrame and lace, you should check out the 1843 needlework there on the apron. Of course, books, pre-electronics serve as entertainment, education, and we are in Tennessee. Over here on the floor, there's a crock jug with a corncob stopper, white lightning, moonshine, whiskey. Men are drinking, smoking pipes and cigars. Also, the house, as far as damage is concerned, when the house is new, this is a functional fireplace, a double flue chimney, a magnificent mantel front by Lotz. But post-battle, the south wall, that part's gone. So what he does is come back and actually blocks in the chimney, relying on the fireplace below us to help heat the upper part of the house. And one thing about this, December 64, the month that followed the battle, one of the coldest Decembers on record in Middle Tennessee's history. So when you see the man make this repair so quickly, you begin to understand the gravity of the situation. That repair is based on one thing: surviving the winter of 64, 65.
Now, when you first walk in the home downstairs, of course, you see that wonderful staircase. Yes. And talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. In studying the guild system, I wanted to understand what one went through. That first 10 years, basically, you were an indentured servant. At 10 years in, you are in journeyman status, which means two things. You may marry, and you finally get paid for your work. The last test that one takes moving from journeyman to master is you have to design and then build a staircase, because no two homes are ever going to be the same. And that staircase is truly his crowning jewel. I think about that every time I go up and down the steps. One thing interesting about that, again, as this is the show home for the man, that newel post is actually the leg of one of his grand pianos. He'll actually flip that massive leg over, and we always say, tell folks, if that's the size of the leg, can you imagine the size of the instrument? Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, that massive, heavy leg will fortify that beautiful black walnut wraparound, freestanding cantilever bending staircase. Woodworkers come in today amazed that 150 years ago by hand. I want to stress, no power tools. All done by hand there. He's able to make that compound bend in those curves. The medallion at the top with his name and date carved 1858. It's a very clear indication that the home is paid for. They show you they have money. They don't talk about the fact there's some cash in the bank. Downstairs, there's the most formal room in the house. It's called the keeping room. It's an old Southern term, unheard of today in the modern day South. Basically called the keeping room because, in short, the family kept out of that part of the house on a day-to-day basis. It's reserved for special occasions, and the custom place the best of their possessions into that room, and that's how they welcome guests into their homes. Of course, bloodstains abound throughout the house on every floor of the home, and some of the worst bloodstains are in that room, where clearly one may see where actually some soldiers are sitting on the floor. They're leaning up against the wall, and you see where they sit. The blood's running through the carpets. And I tell folks, it's so much blood, not to make it a carnival, but it actually causes the original yellow poplar floor to warp and buckle. So when today we see bloodstains of that magnitude, awe-inspiring to realize that this home houses a great deal of dead and dying American soldiers immediately following the bloody Battle of Franklin.
And also indentions on the floor too, right?
Cannonball indentions. It's, again, cannonballs come raining down through the house. It's truly remarkable the house is still standing. But you can walk across the room, and I'll show you across the way where you see the patches. He actually comes back and makes patches in the first floor, coming through the roof, hitting the second floor, and then coming to rest on the first floor.
Is it incredible in some ways to think that this house still is standing after all these years?
It truly is amazing. We walk guests through every room of this house every day except for one. And you will find the occasional squeaky board here and there, but one thing, this house was made to withstand time, and clearly it has. Living through the battle, being rebuilt, and then all the 158 years of history that this house has seen in all the different ways it's been used. We've had several historic preservation architects come and study this house for us, and they're all truly amazed that the footprint of the house is about 70 to 75% the way Lotz built it. They find that truly amazing.
The Lotz house truly is amazing. In addition to the American flag and the Confederate flag hanging from outside the home, There is also a red flag, signifying this home served as a hospital during the Civil War. If you would like to visit the Lotz House, the address is 1111 Columbia Avenue in Franklin. The hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Reporting from Williamson County, Barry Hyatt, NCTV.